So we're so thrilled to bring on this next guest. We wanted to have him on for a while. He does an unbelievable job as the New York correspondent for Daily Racing Forum. David Grening, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Oh, it's so glad to have you. I've been an admirer of your work from afar for a long time, so I was really looking forward to this, as I said. We're going to get into a lot of NYRA stuff and more about your career and your history, but you were just at Parx on Saturday, so I kind of wanted to ask you about that experience, because obviously Parx has been in the news a lot for not so great reasons, and you had a tweet that you came out to Parx just in time to see a horse pulled up. What was your sense of that day? Like, what was the vibe? And yeah, I'm so curious because it's such a big day nominally, but there was just such a black cloud hanging over it. What was your experience like?
Well, listen, the turf course at Park just shouldn't be used. It's just not in proper shape to be used. And they knew that a month ago. They shut it down for a month. They ran a race on it on Monday, a week ago today. And when I watched that race, I was appalled by the fact that they actually ran a race on that course. I had known that they were going to draw the turf monster that day, and I thought there's absolutely no way that they could run that race on this turf course. And they had the Alphabet Soup, which was a Pennsylvania bred stakes run before that, the turf monster, and that was the race in which a horse got pulled up and ultimately was put down. And shortly thereafter, they announced that the other turf race, the turf monster, would come off the turf. I think anyone who had seen the race that I saw on Monday would have known right then and there is no way you can use this turf course. So management, HISA, whoever was supposed to approve that course for use, let people down. And I also put a little fault on the trainers for running their horses on, and owners for actually running their horses on that course. It wasn't that big a pot. You could find another racetrack. Stand up for yourself. Jockeys, stand up for yourself. And, your safety is more important than whatever check you think you're going to get riding on a course that's just not safe. And in my opinion, they should rip that out, put in a synthetic. I'm not a big synthetic guy. They should put in a synthetic surface there. Then you can use it in the wintertime in addition to the dirt, and you can use it as your quote unquote turf course.
Yeah, and it was really a questionable situation, not only because the course looked so unhealthy and so unsafe, but they had like 3+ weeks when they're not even racing in August to try to fix the course and everything like that. What was the feeling in the grandstand? I mean, were people shocked and appalled? Were they like, meh, that's racing here at Parx? What was the feeling?
I went outside to see where the horses were, and there were some people, see what was going on. And there were people that were wondering also what was going on. And there were people that were, just enjoying their day, maybe oblivious to what actually was happening and going about either getting something to eat or drink or going on to the next race. So, unfortunately, not everyone was, or fortunately, I guess everyone was tuned into it, knew exactly what was going on. But, it did seem, the people that were there and knew what was happening knew that something was not right, and were waiting for what happened to that horse, because they didn't do it they did do it on the turf course, I believe.
Got you. Switch gears to New York racing for a second. You're as good of a person, I think, as there is to ask about this. The Belmont reconstruction project, it's all torn down now. They still have the training track in the barns, but the grandstand and everything and the racetracks are all torn up. They say they're going to reopen in 2026, but, I take that with a grain of salt because I've seen a lot of New York construction projects go way past the date that they're supposed to open back up. But you're clued in. Like, what do you think? Do you think that this is going to open on time? And what's the latest developments in the Belmont reconstruction?
Well, all I can tell you right now is they seem to be on schedule. I've been told, and I'm at Belmont most mornings, but they said they've laid the foundation for the new building. I haven't actually seen that just yet, because from where I'm at on the training track side, and when you look over at what used to be the grandstand, you just see a lot of piles of dirt and debris and whatnot. But their courses are being laid out. I think the plan is to I believe the rails are starting to be put up on what would be the outline of the turf courses. And I think they're hopeful of actually laying the sod for those courses down by the end of this fall, which would give them over a year for the roots to take hold. And it's really doing it proper. You can't make a turf course on the run. You can't say we're going to stop in August and have it ready by September. Look at Churchill Downs. They can't stop in April and have it ready, or in July and have it ready by the next April. So NYRA's doing something here that most tracks should do, but don't want to do or can't do from a financial situation. And that's plan it early, let it grow, let the roots grow, let this thing actually take hold. And when you open it a year and a half later, it'll probably be in good shape.
Right. And Dave, just to stick with the New York theme, Joe and I have argued back and forth about whether or not extending the Saratoga meet is a good thing for racing overall. What's your take on that?
I don't think it's overall good. I think if they do it in the short-term fashion, like they say they're doing it. So basically we're talking next year, another week plus plus another day, I guess, of the Belmont Racing Festival at Saratoga. If that's all they're going to do for 1 year, maybe 2 if the project gets delayed, that's okay. If you're going to make Saratoga a 44-day meet or longer, I think you're squeezing the lemon dry, and I think it ultimately will backfire on you. These boutique meets, they're special for a reason because there's not supposed to be that many days of them. We've already extended to 40 over the time since I started covering this. It was not 40. I wasn't there for 24, but it was 30. And then at the 34, 36, 40, I think you're at the absolute limit at 40, in my opinion. Can 44 work 1 year? Sure. And, to show how they're not really interested in extending the meet is they're not going to call the extra week Saratoga. That's going to be, let's see, how many acronyms do we have? The Belmont at Aqueduct at Saratoga week of racing.
Right.
So I don't think their plan, I could be wrong, but I don't think they're planning to have a July 4th to Labor Day meet once they get Belmont Park open. You're not spending $500 million to open a racetrack not to be there.
No, so David is on Team Joe and said it better than I could or did. So I appreciate that backup on that. But no, I wanted to know a little bit more about your history because, like I said, you do a great job covering New York racing. You've been doing it for pretty much all the time that I've been following New York racing to a certain extent. How did you first get into the sport, and how did you find your way to this post at the DRF?
So I started covering horse racing in 1991. I was working and living in Maryland, not covering horse racing, didn't even know a horse is what from a horse is whatever. And I went to interview for a job because I wanted some outside critique on my work. I was in my early 20s and I was like, is this really the profession I should stay in and, right, covering sports and go on. So I interviewed for a job at the Trentonian, Trenton, New Jersey. And I told the guys flat out, I said, look, I don't know anything about racing. I thought it could be racing. I didn't even know that racing was a year-round thing in the Mid-Atlantic or, even in the New York area, to be honest with you. So they said, that's fine. We like your work. You'll learn and we'll sort of guide you and correct up your sloppy mistakes. And, it was almost like writing a term paper every day. Because I'd get red markings back. This is good. This isn't good. Almost get it graded from my publisher. It wasn't even the sports center. It was the publisher of the paper who was really into racing.
Right.
So anyway, it was the summer of 91. First assignment was the Haskell of 91. I remember going down to Monmouth Park. I was living in Somerset, New Jersey, drove to Monmouth Park, sought out Frank Brothers. And I said, Mr. Brothers, I'm David Grening. I work for the Trentonian. I know that your horse Hansel won the Belmont. I know he won the Preakness, and that's about all I know. And about an hour later, I knew a little bit more. And then I sort of started my career there. Trenton is close to Hightstown, New Jersey. Hightstown, New Jersey is where the Daily Racing Form is published or used to be published and printed. There was a gentleman by the name of Greg Gallo who was an editor there, who kind of liked my work and he had gone to the New York Post. And in 1994, he called me up and asked me if I was interested in going to the New York Post. And I said, sounds like an interesting deal. Of course, I had just moved to Princeton, New Jersey. So now I was further away from Belmont Park than I was even, about 3 weeks before that. So I started at the New York Post in 94. Holy Bulls Met Mile was Memorial Day when they used to run on Memorial Day. That was my first assignment for the Post. And I stayed there until 1998 when Steve Christ's group purchased the Racing Form. And they asked me if I was interested in coming over to the Racing Form. And they were bringing over some folks from the New York Times editors, and I was like, this has the potential to be really good. And some of the other members of the staff that they were talking about who were there and who they were bringing in. So right after Saratoga in 1998, I switched over to the Racing Forum. It was the same gig. It was covering New York racing and kept me still doing the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup. So in September, it actually was up, I believe the actual starting date for me was September 11th, 1998 at Daily Racing Forum. And it's now September 23rd, 2024, and I'm still there.
Wow.
Amazing.
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. I'm still
Awesome. They might find out, right? David, out of all those years and decades you've been following racing, is there one horse or one story that you remember that is just a seminal moment in your mind?
Well, there were a couple of things that were very early on that happened that always resonated with me. When Arazi won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile of 1991, I was only like 6 or 7 months into this job, and Dick Girardi, who worked for the Philadelphia paper, who I became friends with because of our close proximity in papers and coverage sites, and I said to him, "Is that normal? Like what that horse did, go from last and circle the whole field and win like that, with the jockey sort of like waving his finger up like he's number one?" I said, "Is that normal?" He goes, No, that's not right." So that performance, which I would say, if you talk to people who have covered Breeders' Cup, well, I guess I'm one of them, as long as it's been around, still top 5, top 7, top 10. That juvenile performance by Arazi has to be. I mean, I thought it was an amazing performance. The 1994 Travers with Holy Bull, that horse resonates because I was at that time I was covering kind of Jersey racing and Jimmy Kroll and the connections there, and that horse. I still remember the Travers when Wayne Lucas put out that rabbit Comanche Trail, and Holy Bull had to put that horse away. And then Tom Durkin's great call, "There's cause for concern," and here comes concern, and Holy Bull wins it. And I remember one of the things that I remember was a little while after that race, I went to see Jimmy back. He was in the stakes barn there next to Ciro's, and when I went over there, and Wayne Lucas comes over to shake his hand and congratulate him and just tell him, what a great horse he had. And I was thinking about that Saturday when I'm interviewing, 30 years later, Wayne Lucas is winning the Pennsylvania Derby still at 89, and people are going crazy for him. So it's those things sort of, just connected there. But early on, it just seemed like a lot of those horses, Cigar came around and did what he did. And the early part of my career, those kind of horses still stand out today, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no doubt. I love hearing those stories. It's a great full circle thing to see Wayne 30 years later still winning big races and you still covering those races. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a general question about the health of New York racing. I think that the way I look at the sport now, Kentucky's going to be here forever. California is kind of in a precarious situation right now where it could go either way. New York, I feel like, is somewhere in the middle. Like, they're making the big capital improvements at Belmont Park. Saratoga obviously is a booming success every year. But the aqueduct product starts to wither and you're getting fewer and fewer dates as the years go on. In your 20-some-odd years of covering New York racing, where are you at in terms of how bullish you are on the future of the sport here?
I'll admit I have some concerns. I'm at Belmont most mornings, and I kind of call my nickname for the clocker stand there. Probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I kind of call it the den of depression. There's a lot of people there that are it's just a lot of negativity, a lot of what are we going to do? How are we going to make it better? We can't continue to do it this way. Yep. And some points they make are correct. But then again, stand up for yourself and try and affect change and find out, if there's got to be some like minds there, and then take your concerns and complaints and go to management and try and work something out. There are a couple of things that New York that NYRA really can't do much about. The cost of doing business in New York is higher than the cost of doing business in Kentucky for sure, and in a lot of other jurisdictions. For whatever reason, the labor board seems to be fixated on New York horsemen and maybe not go other jurisdictions. And it scares a lot of, we've seen penalties and fines levied on New York horsemen, and that scares these guys. They're not necessarily doing anything egregiously wrong. They've been doing what they've been doing because this is not a 9 to 5 industry. It's not for the trainers. It's not for the staff. Not for almost anybody. And it's trying, when you have to comply to those 9 to 5 and everything and overtime, and those costs continue to go up. And some areas of the country, those aren't in effect. And if they are, the hourly cost to pay a hot walker, groom, exercise, whatever, is higher in New York. And it's, the purses are good, but they're not as good as Kentucky. And Kentucky has made it now. You can be insulated in Kentucky. You don't have to ever leave Kentucky if you don't want to. The winter product is synthetic at Turfway Park. That's where we're headed. And the money's still better there than it'll be here. Yeah, we have Saratoga. I get it. Saratoga is, the crown jewel. But you can ship into Saratoga. You don't have to necessarily stay there, be based there.
Right.
Some owners do want you there, and those owners are getting up there in age, and we'll see if that still continues down the road. But you don't really have to leave Kentucky. And recruiting horsemen to New York, I think, is the toughest task. And I think we'll see if they can do that in a couple of years when they go to winter racing as a synthetic product. Woodbine would Woodbine horsemen ship down there? I think to start they would. Are they going to stay? Mark Casse might. He's got a good bankroll. He's got well-heeled owners. Does Kevin Attard stay? I don't know. Does anybody else up there stick around? I don't know.
Right.
And I also think you have a lot of big barns here. Not that they don't have them in other states too, but there's 5 top trainers here have a lot of horses, and they're tough to compete against. And even sometimes it's more perception than reality. Like when you have 2-year-olds, Chad Brown doesn't start 2-year-olds until Saratoga. We should have a booming 2-year-old program in the spring. You don't have to run against his 2-year-olds. We don't. So I don't know the answer to that. But I do so. They run a lot of 2-year-old races in Kentucky in the spring. And those horses this summer came to Saratoga and kicked butt.
Dave, ironically enough, Den of Despair and Depression was actually the original name of our previous podcast with Bill Fenton. So it's interesting that you brought that up. So the industry is at a precipice right now. We all know that it can go one way or the other. Yet these yearling sales are through the roof. There seems to be, hope springs eternal at a lot of these 2-year-old sales as well. How do you attribute the disconnect between the reality of what's going on in racing with the euphoria that goes on at the sales?
It's a good question. And I guess there's a lot of people getting involved in particular horses. And, one used to be one owner used to have 40 horses. Now 40 people have one horse, and it just seems like you get all these groups together and they buy, they spend a lot of money on a particular yearling and they race it for, I don't know, if they're lucky, 6 to 8 to 9 times. And if they hit that grade 1, the horse is off to stud. And I don't know that that's great for the industry, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's hard to, when you see these numbers that they're rolling out there and how well the yearling sales are. Now, be interesting to see where these horses wind up, because it seems like there's a lot more foreign interest in our yearlings, and they take them out of here, not just to different states, but to different countries. And we'll see how many of those are actually going to go abroad, and how many. Now, we've had some owners and trainers go to Tattersalls and bring some horses back, but I'm going to say I think there might be more the other way. I think we might be taking more horses out of here going abroad than coming from there to here. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how long. The other interesting thing I thought about is, a lot of these, I see where there's a big push now where these retired athletes are getting involved in horse racing and spending a lot of money. And for a guy like Jason Worth, who, pardon the pun, hit the home run with Dornock.
Right.
What happens when those home runs are foul balls or singles? And what happens when, he's no longer, he's no longer drawing a paycheck from an organization, a major league organization. Right. And so at some point somebody says, hey, we need to rein this in a little bit. So that's good for right now. I don't know how many legs it has.
You're a journalist unlike us, so you can't have the same strength of opinion that we have, but I really I love talking to you because I you do clearly have such a knowledge and passion for the game. This is the last question. I prefaced it by like that, because maybe you can't opine on this completely, but since HISA came in, we've had a lot of a great uptick in terms of safety numbers. I think that we've seen a cleaner sport, at least anecdotally. You don't see these big run off the screen types off the claim. You don't see these 30% trainers nearly as much as we used to. Do you think that there has been significant progress made since this whole deal came into being?
I think there's been some progress, significant. I'm going to hold back on that a little bit. It irks me when we start seeing trainers get these positives and being sort of put out there as trainers who are cheating, and then all of a sudden, a little while later, oh no, we're going to lift that suspension. It's not what we thought it was, or it's not as egregious, or it's contamination or whatever. There have been trainers who, regardless of that, have had their reputations tarnished, lost clients, and I think there will be more that happens too. I don't like the shoot first, ask questions mentality that they've kind of come out of the box with, which to me is quite surprising for a government agency. I thought, I didn't think it would be that way. I don't know how much. I know there's the protocols that have been put in place, whether it's by HISA or HISA regular, or the racing commissions or the racetracks. But yeah, there's been, we had a great Saratoga from a safety perspective. Unlike last year, we had a terrible Saratoga. Was that anything in particular that HISA did? I can't quantify that. I'm sure there was a role in it. I also believe that there was smarter decisions made in terms of usage of the turf course at Saratoga, specifically this year as opposed to last year. So I think that had something to do with it. So I think there's all combination. I don't think you could ever just put it in on one particular entity or one suggestion that has been made. I do think it's a cleaner sport if you take into account the fact that these positives that are being called for therapeutic medications, or just the fact that you give an injection 6 days out from a workout as opposed to 7, aren't, don't lump them in with the major violations that have been made, because they're not. And the problem with the presentation from them is that it's almost made out to be that way. You go on a website, HISA, Highway, whatever, and you see different colors. But if you're just looking at it from a fan's perspective, or you don't really know that. You just see a bunch of names and colors. You don't necessarily know that this is not as egregious as that. And I just think it could have been done a little bit better. Bringing in horsemen is a good idea. That should have been done from the start. Questions such as, what are we missing? What should we be looking at? And what are we missing? Should have been asked earlier than say what they have to.
No, it's fair. It's definitely fair. Dave, thank you so much for the time and for the knowledge and for the excellent reporting over the years. Because I mean it, like, you have been a real shining light in an industry that I think does not have a ton of great journalistic voices. You're that guy. So appreciate the time. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you for that. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Appreciate it.